Two, and duly seconded. All in favor of adopting the amendment in the nature of substitute for Senate Bill 135, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The bill is now properly in front of us.
Mr. Chairman, with the adoption of the substitutes now identical to House Bill 263 from Delegate Scott, I move the report of the substitutes.
Is there a second? There is a second. Any questions from the committee of the subcommittee chairman? Seeing or hearing none, turn on the electronic voting board and cast your vote. Hugo. Delegate Hugo's light is not on, but I believe he wants to cast a vote in favor. All right. Let the record show that Delegate Hugo also votes yes, and so that makes the vote for Senate Bill 135 to be 18 yes, 0 no. The bill is reported. Thank you very much, Delegate Hugo. You have others.
Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 205 from Senator McWaters. This bill allows persons age 19 or over the option of taking a behind-the-wheel exam at a driver training school as long as they complete the current requirements already in place for persons under 19. It has no conflict with House Bill 996. It got it, which was Delegate Bolus, which passed out of here according to DMV. And Mr. Chairman, it got a full hearing. Subcommittee, I move the report Senate Bill 205.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to report Senate Bill 205. Any questions from any member of the committee to the subcommittee chairman? Seeing or hearing none, call the question now. Turn on the electronic voting board. Cast your vote. Has everyone voted? Close the rolls. Senate Bill 205 is reported with 18 yeses and 0 noes. Delegate Hugo.
Mr. Chairman, next up is Senator Deeds. It's a special license plate to protect pollinators, and he had the requisite number of signatures on this. I would move that it was adopted 6-0 subcommittee. I would move the report Senate Bill 259.
Moved and seconded to report Senate Bill 259. Any member of the committee have a question on to the subcommittee chairman? Seeing or hearing none, turn on the electronic voting board, cast your vote on Senate Bill 259. Has everyone voted? Close the roll. Senate Bill 259 is reported 18 yes, 0 no. Delegate Hugo.
Mr. Chairman, next up is Senate Bill 356 from Senator Cosgrove. This revises the requirements and procedures for the manufactured homes as they move back and forth. I think we have a motion, a number of amendments to adopt, and I move we adopt the amendments.
Mr. Chairman, there are two amendments. The first is to page 2 of the substitute, line 95. At the beginning of the line, insert, security interest in a manufactured home is perfected against the rights of judicial lien creditors, execution creditors, and purchasers for value on and after the date such security interest attaches. And on page 2, line 105, after manufactured home is, insert or was.
All right, and I believe there was a motion to include the amendments duly seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the bill is now in its proper form.
Mr. Chairman, with the adoption of the amendments, I move that we report Senate Bill 356.
Moved and seconded to report Senate Bill 356. Any member of the committee have a question or comment on the issue? Seeing or hearing none, turn on the electronic voting board and cast your vote on Senate Bill 356. Has everyone voted? Close the roll. Close the vote. Senate Bill 356 is reported 18 yeses and 0 noes. Delegate Hugo.
Mr. Chairman, next up and lastly, I believe is Senate Bill 367 from Senator McKeechin. Just a couple seconds, it's a little more interesting. People may have questions. This pertains to allowing people with autism to have something on their driver's license that indicates that they're autistic. It's totally voluntary, so you do not have to until what has happened in the past, and it also apply if you don't drive to a DMV issued drive ID identification card. What's happened in the past is sometimes people with autism don't respond as quickly or like people would not have an autism. And there's been instances where the police have gotten altercations and literally beat some of these people. Not intentionally, I guess, not understanding that they had autism. So what the hope is that they'll have this on their license, the police officers or others will be able to see that they have autism and cut down on some of these things here. Again, it's totally voluntary. It allows for the person to not require, and it got a full hearing of the subcommittee. I would move that we report Senate Bill 367.
There's a motion to report Senate Bill 367. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. A second. Questions, comments? Delegate Habib.
Mr. Chairman, I guess this would be in the form of a question for the subcommittee chairman. As I understand it, there's this issue of autism in here, but there's a lot of language about designating emergency contact information and setting up an emergency contact system, and then providing civil and criminal immunity for the use of the emergency contact system. Is that still in the current bill?
I'll have DMV comment on that.
DMV, could you come forward?
And I'll tell you, the civil and criminal liability immunity gives me a whole bunch of heartburn. So that's the part that caught my eye.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Karen Grimm with DMV. The concern that you've expressed about, I guess, immunity as it relates to the emergency contact, this again is voluntary. The individual is going to be given the opportunity to provide the name, the phone number, the address of two individuals. That will then be between them and their contact. That is not something that DMV will become involved in.
Mr. Chairman?
Delegate Habib.
And now the senator's here, so I'll give him the respect of maybe pointing out where I'm going with this issue. Senator McKeachin, the issue that I have with your bill, and not that it means I'm voting no, but the issue that I'm working through is this idea of civil and criminal liability immunity for misuse, unless, I know you've got some qualifications in there, willful misconduct or gross negligent misuse of the information in this database. I understand the information to be provided is voluntary, you're voluntarily doing it, but once you do that, you give that information to somebody, and now we're applying some civil immunity and criminal immunity concepts that we don't do lightly in Virginia. And frankly, I don't know that we normally do them outside of the courts committee into here. So I guess I just wanted to get your thoughts, Senator, or the proponents of the bill as to the inclusion of that immunity language.
Senator McKeachin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Delegate Habib. What I would say to you is this portion, this aspect of the bill has not been previously discussed. So the Senate certainly has not thought through what you're suggesting. My off the top of my head response would be is that we're not trying to do anything in this bill that's not done elsewhere. For instance, it's my understanding, I think DMV can confirm this, that for certain medical issues, there is a code put on the back of licenses. We did, obviously this idea is drawn from other ideas. To the extent that we provide that type of immunity, either civil or criminal, I would suggest to you that it's appropriate here. To the extent that we do not, that I think perhaps we might need to rearrange the words on the page.
Delegate Habib.
Yeah, and I don't want to make more of this, and this is probably my lack of objectivity as it relates to my love of the courts committee, my belief that every bill should go through the courts committee at some point.
I have to share that.
I know, and I have previously expressed my opinion that we could survive with just courts and appropriations, although I'm in a strong minority in making that argument. The inclusion of the autism or other disability designation, that makes absolute sense to me. It's a no-brainer. It's going to help a community of people. It's going to help law enforcement. No problem with that. And I also get why we want an emergency contact database that's voluntary for people who say, look, there's a unique circumstance. Someone needs to get in touch with me if this particular individual runs into problems. Just anytime I see the words criminal and civil liability immunity thrown in the code section, it just starts to make me real nervous. Now, I understand what the department might say is without that, we don't want to be in charge of this database, because if someone hacks our database and steals the information, we don't want to go to jail for it or get sued for it. So I understand why they would want it. Normally, this would go to the criminal subcommittee, they would debate it for 7 hours. And then we'd all go, okay, now we're comfortable with what we just did, because those guys debated for 7 hours. I think we're probably too late in the game to let them debate it for 7 hours, so I just feel like it needs to at least be said so that it's on the table.
Senator McKeachin, any further comment on that issue?
I don't have any other comment, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Delegate Garrett.
I guess I would then ask a non-attorney's even simpler step back question, perhaps to the DMV commissioner. How would it help or hurt the needs of the autistic community to be able to designate on their driver's license just as the needs of the medical emergency situations of a diabetic? There's a diabetic emergency, car wrecks. It's very important for the police officer to know that this person in fact might have been diabetic. That may be part of the process, or the inability to communicate with either hearing or speech impediment or deficit. I get that. So even more simplistic than the Delegate Habib's question, because I don't understand the civil and criminal liability and yada, yada, yada. What would this, Senator McKeachin or Commissioner Holcomb, would it help this, or could we move this forward if somehow this were shrunk down to basically say we add that to autism spectrum disorders to the list of challenges that it's important for us, the Commonwealth, us, the individual, communicate with the Commonwealth in those issues?
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Garrett, Rick Holcomb, DMV Commissioner. Quite frankly, we've hijacked the Senator's bill to add the second component. We wanted to create an emergency contact database so that if someone is killed in an accident, that law enforcement would be able to access their next of kin and contact them. Or if somebody was severely injured, they could do that. We looked at the Senator's bill and asked him, would he be willing to carry that as part of the bill? We thought we could do it administratively. The Attorney General's office said, no, you need legislative authority to set up this emergency contact. Certainly, if there are concerns about the immunity, we don't want to do harm to the Senator's bill that does a very good thing on autism. So certainly, if there is an amendment to strip law enforcement of that immunity and using that information, we would have no problems with it. But we really do think the citizens of the Commonwealth should be able to have a next of kin listed so that if something happens to them, they can be notified by the law enforcement on scene or by the medical people.
Commissioner, let me follow up, and maybe I had missed a critical point here. So we would be adding this, and I'm like Dr. Garrett, I don't know the difference between criminal and civil, but we would be adding that to all of these categories. They're not there today, and we would be adding the autism to that list of contacts, so to speak, or notifications of. We're adding that now to all of these different categories. So that is a new part of the bill. Do I understand that correctly?
Mr. Chairman, again, what we've done is we found a bill that is at least in the same church, and we thought from a germane standpoint, we could create this database, again, which many states have. And so, yes, this would be one example where if one of these drivers were stopped, law enforcement could access that database, could say we're having problems communicating with this driver, so let's call the next, let's call a relative. But it is broader than that. It's for any time that something happens to that driver that a next of kin would want to be notified, or a family member would want to be notified. Again, it's voluntary. We think it's good information. We've had a lot of customers ask for that. And so that's what we're asking for. And again, if it's the will of the committee to strip the immunity, we still think that it would be a victory to have us be able to create that database optionally for our citizens.
Thank you, Commissioner. Delegate Senator McKeachin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, just for the sake of clarity, if you turn to, at least on my copy, page 2 of the bill, and you look down at lines 105 through 106, that's the piece where we're adding autism spectrum disorder and intellectual disabilities. The section that Delegate Habib is talking about is the first page, section E, which is lines 40 to 43. Now that I've taken another look at it, here's my comment on that, and of course, this is just a philosophical comment. This is what I like to call, and I'm sorry that it's pejorative, the Richmond Shuffle, okay? Because we never really make anything immune. What we do is we change what you have to prove in order to get your win as a criminal, as a prosecutor, or as a plaintiff. And so in this case, what we're saying is it has to be gross negligence before you can sue. To me, if it's a jury issue, it's a jury issue. It's not really an immunity. It's not like you're saying this group of people can never, ever be sued. We haven't said that. So again, a lot of times when we come up here on immunity bills, what we're doing is we're sort of changing the type of negligence that can be prosecuted or the type of negligence that can be sued upon. And I always sort of, I always sort of laugh to myself about it because we're never really making anybody immune. What we're doing is changing what I have to allege in my pleadings. That's just my take on our immunity bills as a whole. Again, I'm agnostic as to what you do with this section. I think DMV has said that as well. I don't think this hurts anything, but again, I'm agnostic as to whether it's included or excluded.
Thank you. Delegate Hugo.
Mr. Chairman, as I was saying when we were introducing the bill, the situation is a lot of these people with autism and other spectrum disorders have a problem communicating. They have a difficulty. And they have a problem with difficulty communicating with police, and we basically seen some of these people just leave, whether it's right or wrong. I guess my question to DNB, I think some people up here have concern about the database. Is it a database? The question for me, is it a database for all DMV customers, or is it just a database for this select group of people who have the special, who have autism, who have some of these spectrum disorders, a few delineated items here?
Mr. Chairman, Delegate, it would be an optional database for any, I'm sorry, Delegate Hugo. It would be an optional database for anyone who wanted to participate in it that would want to give, DMV for law enforcement to use a next of kin or a family member. So it is broad. It would be for any citizen.
Delegate Garrett.
Well, that's the emergency contact.
Yes, sir.
base.
Yes, sir.
So remember, we're essentially talking about two different things: the emergency contact base, and then the intellectual disorder and autism spectrum, for lack of a better word, identification on the back of the driver's license.
Mr. Chairman,
I think, Senator, we're not having a problem with your original bill. I think the discussion is about the
Mr. Chairman,
notification.
what he
If you go.
says, you could have I think that would be okay if it was a database just for people with autism and the spectrum disorder. But you're creating a database of basically every driver, or potentially creating a database of every driver. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Hugo, we would give citizens the opportunity that if they wanted to provide a next of kin or a family member, so that if something happens to them that law enforcement needs someone to contact, it's what many states do. It's optional. But yeah, if this provision of the bill was taken out, then law enforcement would not be able to contact a family member of someone who suffers from autism, from any malady.
Delegate Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My second line of questioning was actually going to be on the medical piece of it, which I do a little bit more about. I'm looking at the section of the code that defines intellectual disability, and as I understand it, that's basically anybody with an IQ below 80, because it has to be two standard deviations below the mean. So, and also autism spectrum disorders right now, as the medical community is sort of finding it, is becoming an ever greater sort of encompassing basket of lots of different diagnoses. ADHD as an example, in some people's perspectives, some physicians could be determined. So I just want to make sure that we're quite clear. We're really going to be, Commissioner, a lot of folks who now will qualify to have some sort of designation, whether in fact that impairs them or not. And I respect, I don't know how hearing impaired you have to be before hearing is put in, or how visually impaired. I don't know know that, to be quite frank, but I just want to make sure that we're not imposing something upon you, sir, that you may not necessarily want to do.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Garrett, whatever the physician certifies is what we put on the license. So it's up to the physician to tell us. We don't make any medical determinations.
And then, one final.
Delegate Garrett.
And Senator, I think the best thing to do would be just to strike lines, whatever, 15 through 44, I think it was. And that may address some of those concerns. Lines 15 through 44, if that does no harm, sir, that may help move things along.
I think you mean 43, if I'm not mistaken.
But I have 44 on mine, but it may be 43, sir.
Okay.
Through the word emergency situation period. In essence, striking the language that makes reference to it, and simply adds the language on lines 106 through 108 that articulates the concept that this is enough of a communication impediment that it rises to the level that it joins hearing and speech impediments as something that should be on our statewide driver's license.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator McKeechen, and then I need to hear from Dr. Wamba. He has an issue, I think. Senator?
if you're going to do that, I think you probably want to go up to line 6 and after the semicolon, strike emergency contact program.
I think that's what Dr. Wamba.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, I was going to suggest if it's the pleasure of the committee to go into in this direction, we would do a substitute for the bill to take the first section, the added section, out of the bill and take it also out of the title and the enactment.
Delegate Garrett. Have you made a motion or are you just,
Mr. Chairman, I would
conversation?
I would offer that as a motion, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Moved and seconded, discussion on the motion. Delegate
Chairman.
Scott.
I believe we need to just, to be sure we get it right, I believe we need to further amend the motion to strike the language on lines 205 and 206 that have a delayed enactment clause for the emergency contact piece as well.
I would accept that as well, Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Wamba, are you with us? Okay, I think what the motion is, and so we all understand where we are, is basically this would eliminate the contact portion of Senate Bill 367, but leave in the portion about adding an intellectual disability or autism spectrum disorder onto a designation of the license, the driver's license. I think that's it in a nutshell. Everyone understand? All right, we have some other speakers. Delegate Garrett, have you completed your comments?
Yes, sir, thank you very much.
Delegate Comstock.
Oh, on the current law that allows the designation, I was just wondering if the DMV could answer how that is utilized now, how that operates, and how many other states do the same thing.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we don't have any stats on how many other states offer this type of voluntary service for individuals to have certain disabilities noted on their license. But we do, it is indiscreet, I guess, or as discreet as it can be. We put a code 9 on the front of the license, so when you provide, or ID card, so when you're providing that to someone other than law enforcement, they don't immediately see that there could possibly be some sort of disability for that individual may have. And on the back of the credential, it will decode it and display whether it's hearing impaired, diabetes, or.
So it's actually, Mr. Chairman, so it's actually a code. So if you're writing a check and I'm using my license for somebody looking at my license wouldn't know it, it's a code that's on it.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
And other states.
Delegate Comstock.
Other states do this with autism, or I just wonder what the experience might be, if anyone.
Mr. Chairman, we're not aware of any other states, whether they do or they don't offer this, but we've been doing it for a number of years and have had nothing but good experiences with it.
And Mr. Chairman,
Delegate Comstock.
this is also been incorporated in your current budget then, this
Chairman, yes, that this will not affect our budget at all. Thank you.
Delegate Hugo.
Yeah, it's just a follow-up for DMV. It sounds like Senator was helping you out by putting that section in, which I guess proves no good deed goes unpunished. But just going back one quick question on the way it's done, we deleted it. Do other states have this voluntary contact database, or would we be the first? I mean, this section's out, just satisfying my curiosity.
There are many, many other states that offer this voluntary service.
We haven't voted yet. The Christians have voted.
We have not voted. We have not voted yet. Delegate Hugo, Delegate Brink, have you gone? On. Delegate Comstock, do you have anything? Or no? Anyone else? All right, to be clear, the motion is, in essence, to eliminate the references to the the voluntary emergency contact and leave in place the addition of the intellectual disability and the autism spectrum to this bill. Is that, and Dr. Wamba, you can explain it far better than I.
And one more thing, Mr. Chairman, in addition to simply making the changes in the title and acting clause, the effective date clause on the end of the bill no longer serves any purpose. That would be well.
Dr. Wamba, would this, if this passes, would this be a substitute or an amendment?
We could do it as a line-by-line amendment, but it'd be a whole line. I suggest we probably want to do it as a substitute.
I concur. If this passes, we'll do it as a substitute. Okay, does everybody understand where we are? Is everyone prepared to cast their vote on the amendment, on the amendment which will, if passed, create a substitute bill? Okay. Turn on the electronic voting.
We have to accept.
Yeah, we're voting on the amendment first, and then we'll see what happens with that. Then we'll come back and vote on the main bill. So this is the amendment. And this is only a voice vote. Thank you. Okay. All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, the amendment is adopted. Now we're back to the main bill, which is now a substitute. Does everyone understand where we are on that? Okay.
Chair, move to adopt the word substitute.
Moved and seconded to report the substitute. Any questions? Seeing or hearing none, turn on the electronic voting board. Cast your vote on the substitute for Senate Bill 367. Has everyone voted? Close the roll. The substitute is passed 20 yea, 0 nay. Thank you, Senator McEachin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I believe that concludes our agenda. This is the last meeting of the year of this session of the Transportation Committee. I would like to thank everyone for their hard work. We did a great job, in my opinion, and in particular, I want to thank the subcommittee chairman and the members of the individual subcommittees that have worked so hard on these issues. Thank you all, and with that, the committee will rise. Thank you.
You guys want to start